we'll talk before we get into a lot of slides. Now, ever since the first banknotes were printed by the Chinese, governments and other agencies printing banknotes have tried to make certain that they aren't counterfeited. Not a bad idea. Most of the counterfeiting measures are done through visual or means that can be seen with a microscope or a magnifying glass. They're documented in many ways, and most collectors of banknotes know how to find them. There is, however, a method that is not visible and is not well documented. Indeed, most catalogs do not even mention the method. The method I'm speaking about is fluorescent or ultraviolet tagging. Now, for your information, there's only one catalog that I can verify that has information on ultraviolet tagging about banknotes, and that was written by Howard Daniels on the banknotes of Laos. Why do I know that? Because I gave him the information. The banknote book and the Krause books do not mention it at all. Now, if you collect stamps, you're familiar with fluorescent printing used on many world stamps. Any self-respecting stamp collector has an ultraviolet light source for viewing the ultraviolet ink imprints on stamps. Banknote collectors, however, pay little attention to fluorescent overprints. Fluorescent overprints or tags are not mentioned in the major English currency catalogs. One reason is possibly that United States currency, up until the recent Federal Reserve notes, redesigns, do not have any ultraviolet printing. However, many other countries have and still do print notes with ultraviolet printing. This evening, I'm going to talk about the banknotes of Czechoslovakia that have ultraviolet or fluorescent tagging. I'm going to include the notes of the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. I'll explain why. Czechoslovakia was born after the First World War in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in case you care. It consisted of former Austria-Hungarian Empire provinces of Bohemia, Moravia, Silesia, Slovakia, and portions of Belarus, Hungary, and Poland. It existed from 1919 to 1939 when Adolf Hitler invaded it and broke it up into the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia and Slovakia. At the end of the Second World War, Czechoslovakia was put back together. And then in 1991, it split again in the Velvet Revolution, the only splitting of a country that had absolutely no armies involved at all. They just said, now we're two countries, we're the Czech Republic and Slovakia. Big deal. In examining the banknotes of Czechoslovakia and the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, I discovered the first note to circulate with a hidden fluorescent printing were the issues of Bohemia and Moravia, starting with a 500 crown note of 1942. If I push the right button, it should come up. I know it doesn't like me for some reason. Cheryl, hit the down button, the down arrow. Oh, there it is.
I just moved it.
Yeah, just move the thing there. Okay. This is the first note, and as you can see, this is a thousand crown note. And I'm taking a picture under the ultraviolet light, and you can see that there's 1,000 in this goulash here, and the serial number lights up.
Tim, hit one of those switches back there, up there, back here. See those?
Wrong one. There you go.
Leave the back on. There we go. Yeah.
This is what the note looks like without the ultraviolet. You can see that the 1,000 goulash is here, but under ultraviolet, it actually shows up, and you do not see the serial number over here.
Is the serial number somewhere else too? Oh,
Oh, yeah,
it is. Yeah.
It's always visible, but they hid it. Okay, let me go on and Let me explain the breadth and tags used in check notes and then get into specific examples. The least complicated ultraviolet tagging method is to use fluorescent threads or particles in the paper like colored threads in our current notes. The simplest tag is printing the denomination or serial number in an ink that is visible only under ultraviolet light, or printing the serial number or denomination in an ink that changes color under ultraviolet light. Next, printing numbers or other indices on the note with ultraviolet ink that are not printed in visible ink. Most complicated method is to add intricate design elements that are only visible under ultraviolet light. Any combination of the described methods could be used. Now, you would think that the use of ultraviolet ink for invisible printing on banknotes would start out simple. It is true that printing started simple, but rapidly got more complex, as shown in the first notes issued by the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. The first notes, the ultraviolet ink, for the 500,000 crown notes of 1942. Whoops.
It's like that forward button.
There, I hit the wrong button. Maybe that, there's the first one. They did make it complex, and you see it does have the serial number displayed a second time. Now, this is a different issue of the same note. Okay, so it's a different catalog number. It doesn't have the serial number on it, but it still has that goulash shows up.
Oh, but this serial number fluoresced over here.
Yes, just the AC part. The other part did too. It's a little bit different color. Okay. These two issues and each designed with different ultraviolet printing. The first issue used the denomination in the middle or the front of the note. The second issue of these notes had the denomination and a goulash print in the center of the front of the note. The goulash is a geometric design surrounding the denomination of the note. The engraving of the goulash is exquisite. Okay, that's 1,000. Here's the 500. Nice note. Oh, by the way, it says sample specimen on it because that's how they sold them at the end of the war to American tourists that went to Czechoslovakia. So they couldn't spend them. Yeah, they'd stamp it specimen in English. So they could tell it to the tourists. They'd sell it to the tourists in books. You know, scrapbooks. Interesting way of getting rid of old notes. Okay. Here's the 500. It's simple. Just has the 500 in there. Nothing elaborate.
This looks like a picture of the head also on the left there.
That's a watermark.
Couldn't see it as well.
Yeah, well, it all depends on how you take the picture.
Gotcha.
Okay. And this is the same note, different issue. Whoops. This is the first one. This is a different issue, same note, and now it has the goulash here. It has a serial number lighting up here, and then has 500 on the portrait. One of the ways of telling that the two issues are the first issue and the second issue, which they did in that point in time. Yeah, the original issue did not have the goulash, the second issue did on the 500. Okay, next note. This is the 100. Nice note, beautiful engraving on it. Okay, now it has a nice goulash in the middle. It's got the shield here in a color with a series number and the serial number come up in color.
Yeah.
Looks like that.
It is.
Yeah.
And anybody that's ever been to the Czech Republic knows that that's Prague.
John,
Yes,
are you saying goulash? What do you call that thing in the middle? That
Yeah.
giant thing in the middle? Is it because it?
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. It's spelled Guilloche.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't sound like goulash, okay. It
It's
looks like goulash, kind of. Thank you for the clarification.
It's a printing term that they use. Okay, this is a 5,000 now. Note from Bohemia and Moravia again. You see it has that nice 5,000. And this nice engraving. This is a very complex engraving. And you also see it has 5,000 here, and the 5,000 is hidden behind it. And the series here and here come up. Okay, after the Second World War ended, Czechoslovakia was reunited and used ultraviolet ink printing continued. Okay, this is a 20 crown note. Again, of the protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. And all they did here, you can almost see it right here. Not very visible. And then the numbers. Now, this is after the war, a note from Slovakia that has a stamp on it. Why the stamp? That says it's now a Czech note for 500 crowns. That's how they told the difference between notes that they couldn't use and notes they could use. They had all sorts of fun with stamps. And it's simple, just to get over here. And down here. Where it says 500 at Stowe. Okay, now this is again Czechoslovakia. This is 1945. War was ended. And all they did here, they have a serial number down here. They have a series number up here, which you can't see, and the series number here, which you can see. You have the serial number over here that you can see. But with ultraviolet, it's hidden down here too. And the series number is hidden here. And then the series number is lit up right there. Interesting. And then on the back, this is the Prague Opera House right here. You have this and the 5,000 here. So in this note, they did it on both sides. Not every note did they do that. I got all this stuff written down and I just go through the slides. What the hell? Okay, this is a 100 crown note, 1945. Beautiful Liberty pad right here. And what did they do? They have the serial number and the series number. Nothing really fancy. There's a 1,000 crown note from 1940, 43, 45. This one is interesting because they actually put the denomination and the country on the note.
That would have been during the war,
This is right after the war,
43.
45, 1945. So this is interesting because you can't see it when you're looking at the note. You might be able a little bit maybe, but under the ultraviolet light, there it is. Tells you exactly what it is. Can't confuse it.
John, with a different color, they have to print it multiple times.
I don't know, but probably. It depends on how they use the ink over what was already printed there, how it would cause the color to be different. There's almost nothing written about how this is done. Because nobody till recently is cared about it. Yes, Jared? He doesn't. It would only be used by banks to tell you.
Bouncers probably.
Yeah, because the banks would have the black lights, but The man on the street, no, and in those days, no, you wouldn't have one because it was not something that was in the general public's hands. You know, like today, you can go to Amazon and buy a ultraviolet light easily. Yes, what?
You know what they were using it for?
I don't really know. I suspect they had an ultraviolet filter over a white light, which works quite nicely. You can build an ultraviolet filter that filters out everything but the ultraviolet rays. In fact, I have an ultraviolet filter glass in a box at home with a light behind it that works quite nicely. I don't use it. This is 1948. Now it's interesting, this guy right here was a professor of, I think, astronomy in Paris before the war, before the First World War. And then he became a French general during the First World War. And he was also going to be the first Minister of Defense of Czechoslovakia. But his plane got shot down somewhat mysteriously and he got killed. But he's a very famous guy in the Czech Republic. Okay, also he did there, not even it kind of like a serial number. And if you look at it in bright light, you can almost see that it's there. It's in a light blue, but under the ultraviolet light, it stands out nicely. I like her, she's nice one. This is 1949, 20 crowns.
Most of the people on these notes are just representative people, right? He was an actual.
He was an actual person, yes, these are just representative. Now, if you look at this one, this is somewhat elaborate. This has the twin-tailed lion and the shield of Czechoslovakia on it. They don't have a two-headed lion, they have a twin-tailed lion. You can tell that because the Czech people are the only ones who use a twin-tailed lion. Other people might have double-headed eagles. This is a twin-tailed lion. Nice maiden. This is 1951. By 1951, the Czechoslovakia was now a communist country controlled by the Russians. And they put the country seal on it over here. Again, the twin-tailed lion, you can almost see it, serial number, etc. The nice note, 1,000-crown note from 1951. And again, this one is a little bit fuzzy. It's kind of hard sometimes to focus when you're shooting in blue light, but here's again the country seal right here. That you can't see with normal light. Okay, a 20 crown note. This is from 1953 again. And again, they put this nice engraving in there that says 20 in it. Hard to distinguish, but if you're in a bank and you got the black light, yeah, it's legit. 1961. They just do the serial numbers.
The nuclear symbol on that.
Now, this is a real guy. This is John Zabel. He was a half-blind commander during a war in Europe in the beginning of I think it was the 30 Years' War. He was never killed. He never lost.
Just one.
Just the one, yeah. He got blinded early on in the battle and he just kept it that way. He's a famous hero for them too, because he kept the Austrians away. The Germans. Again, just the serial numbers. Now this is 1973, more like a little more communist information on it. And there, this is on the back of that note. They just have the serial number and a series number on it. This is getting newer. I forgot what year this one is. This is in the 80s or 90s. And here they do something really interesting. They take the top of the note, they take the side of the head, and then they have interspersed in the note these fluorescent specks. Like in our notes, we have red and blue silk threads. These you don't see unless it's under the ultraviolet light. Very interesting concept. Here's the 200, which they do the same thing. Top of the 200 on the side of the head. Now this is an interesting thing. This happens to be, they don't use these anymore because the Czech Republic is not communist. This was used by tourists in the Turzek department store in Prague. This is how you bought something in that store if you happen to be from out of the country. They'd give you these notes. And all they did is they put the name of the store right here. Interesting stuff. So that's the end of my talk. They still do that to notes today in the Czech Republic. There are a lot of other countries where they do this also. But it's something that, like I say, is not cataloged anyplace. Yes.
In your research, what do they use for the tag? What's the chemical process that they use for the rest?
They're using a fluorescent ink.
What the composition, what makes it?
That I don't know. I've never looked that up. I think you can still get fluorescent inks. You know, it's basically invisible unless you have a black light. Okay. Now the photographs are all taken with a compact fluorescent ultraviolet lights purchased at Spencer's in Eastview, because they're the one that sell the black lights to be used in parties, so you can paint fluorescent stuff all over your room. Like my daughter, you go into her room now, you turn on a black light and her room lights up. She got a hold of that stuff when she was a kid. The camera used was an Olympus E420, which is no longer made. It's a digital SLR mounted on a handmade copy stand. So we had the lights in the stand. And as Tim will tell you, since he happens to carry around a ultraviolet light in his pocket, you go to a coin show and you look at notes from other countries that just flash the light on them, and sometimes you'll find something. Much of the time you won't. And I told you about the notes from Laos. It happened to be the first series of notes for Laos as a country after the Second World War. The first series was intaglio printed, and it had a fluorescent stripe down one portion of the note. They had a second series printed that was printed lithograph and did not have the ultraviolet tag on it. And the easiest way to tell the two series of notes is with an ultraviolet light. The hard way is to look at the printing itself and say, this one isn't quite as perfect as the first one. First series was a little more perfect than the second, but you have to use a magnifier and a lot of work to figure out the difference between the two. With an ultraviolet light, 30 seconds. And you know it. Okay. Now I didn't read this all the way I had it written. Maybe I'll stick it in the newsletter one of these days. That'd be interesting. Put that camera back on.
Thanks, John. That was kind of cool. While he was doing that, I Googled, because I can't help myself, that word, which I'm gonna say galoche, but it says it's a fine complex pattern consisting of intertwined uninterrupted lines that are built up according to a geometric regularity. You really can't reproduce it without the original data, and you can customize it to a certain extent. So I could what?
Yes, Google pronounce.
I could. But I'm not going to. Because that might be too much.